Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the lost city of Z, Percy Fawcett's final expedition. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 1925, British explorer Percy Fawcett set out into the Amazon jungle of Brazil with his son Jack and a friend named Raleigh Rimmel, searching for an ancient city he called Z, a civilization of stone temples and wide roads hidden in the unexplored interior of the Mato Grosso. They were never seen again. Fawcett was no ordinary crank. He was a decorated soldier, a skilled surveyor, and one of the most experienced Amazonian explorers alive. He had spent years in the jungle conducting surveys for the Royal Geographical Society. His belief in a lost Amazonian civilization was based on genuinely anomalous historical sources, including a document known as Manuscript 512, an 18th-century Portuguese account of a ruined stone city found deep in the Brazilian interior. And 50 years after Fawcett disappeared, archaeology began to discover that he may have been looking for something real. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the global puzzle of unexplained ancient construction, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The sky was the original clock, calendar, and map. Before writing, before money, before cities, human beings looked up and organized their lives around what they saw. The position of the sun at solstice told them when to plant and when to harvest. The rising of specific stars marked the seasons. The phases of the moon governed ceremonial calendars in cultures from Ireland to India. Our ancestors were not casual observers of the night sky. They were meticulous, obsessive, and precise in a way that rivals modern astronomical science. This precision is encoded in stone at sites around the world. Newgrange in Ireland is aligned so precisely that sunlight enters its inner chamber only during the 5 days around the winter solstice, and it has done so every year for more than 5,000 years. The pyramids of Giza are oriented to true north with an accuracy of 0.05 degrees. Stonehenge tracks both the midsummer sunrise and the midwinter sunset, as well as the 18-6-year lunar cycle. These alignments are not accidental. They were engineered with mathematical precision by cultures we have long underestimated. What drove this obsession with celestial mechanics? Partly practical. Agriculture depends on knowing the seasons, but partly something more profound. Ancient cultures believed the sky was alive, that the movements of stars and planets determined the fates of kingdoms and harvests. In this worldview, encoding celestial cycles into permanent stone was not merely useful but sacred. The great monuments of the ancient world are, among other things, the most durable clocks ever built. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the lost city of Z, Percy Fawcett's final expedition, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Percy Harrison Fawcett was a British Army officer and explorer who conducted multiple South American expeditions between 1906 and 1924 for the Royal Geographical Society. He was responsible for mapping significant portions of the Bolivia-Brazil border region. His reports were taken seriously by the geographic establishment of his time. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly, it is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered manuscript 512, now held in the National Library of Brazil in Rio de Janeiro, is an 18th century Portuguese document describing a ruined stone city found by a Bandeirante frontier explorer in the Bahia region of Brazil. The city is described as having wide roads, stone arches, and a statue in a central plaza, consistent with a pre-Columbian urban settlement. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine Fawcett's 1925 expedition departed from Cuiabá in the Mato Grosso in April 1925. His last letter, dated May 29, 1925, described camping at a site he called Dead Horse Camp on the upper Xingu River. After that, silence. Over a dozen rescue expeditions over the following decades found no trace. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, archaeological research in the Upper Xingu region, beginning in the 1990s and accelerating with LiDAR surveys in the 2010s, has revealed extensive evidence of large pre-Columbian settlements, Ring V, villages, roads, earthworks, and managed landscapes, consistent with densely populated Amazonian civilizations that the mainstream had dismissed as impossible in the rainforest environment. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the Brazilian anthropologist Eduardo Viveiros de Castro and archaeologist Ana Roosevelt have documented evidence suggesting the Amazon was home to complex, densely populated societies before European contact, with populations of millions that were catastrophically reduced by disease after 1492. This would explain why early colonial explorers reported cities that later explorers could not find. The cities existed, but their populations were gone. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. LiDAR surveys of the Xingu Basin, published in 2018, revealed a network of connect-ed settlements described as a garden city landscape, covering an area of approximately 1,800 square kilometers with 30 interconnected villages connected by a planned network of roads. These settlements date to approximately 1400 AD, exactly the kind of urban landscape Fawcett was seeking. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. Equally puzzling to investigators, Fawcett's fate remains unknown. Multiple theories have been proposed: killed by indigenous people, died of disease or starvation, or disappeared voluntarily to live with an indigenous tribe. No physical remains have been definitively identified as his or his companions. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the lost city of Z, Percy Fawcett's final expedition. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Fawcett's lost city Z was not a single stone city, but a network of interconnected large settlements in the upper Xingu basin of the kind subsequently documented by LiDAR survey. He was, in essence, correct that complex civilization had existed in the Amazon interior, but the civilization was dispersed rather than concentrated in a single urban center. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that Fawcett found what he was looking for and chose to remain in the Amazon, either voluntarily living with indigenous people or compelled to stay under circumstances that prevented his return. This theory is supported by claimed sightings of a white man living with indigenous groups in the Mato Grosso in the years following his disappearance. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that Fawcett and his companions died in the Amazon from disease, starvation, or violence within a short period of their last known communication, and their remains are in a region so remote and so ecologically aggressive that no trace has survived. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the lost city of Z, Percy Fawcett's final expedition, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion, we are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes LiDAR surveys of the Xingu Basin published in 2018 directly confirmed the existence of a complex network of pre-Columbian settlements in the region. Fawcett was exploring. NG, validating his core, claimed that sophisticated civilization had existed in the Amazon interior. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the dark earth, terra preta, soils found throughout the Amazon basin are evidence of intensive, long-term human occupation and agricultural management, consistent with large permanent settlements rather than nomadic hunter-gatherer populations. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed manuscript 512, despite its extraordinary claims, describes archaeological features, stone architecture, paved roads, central plazas, consistent with the kinds of settlements that LiDAR surveys have subsequently confirmed in the Xingu Basin. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the lost city of Z, Percy Fawcett's final expedition. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Percy Fawcett has been vindicated in his core claim. The Amazon did support large, complex civilizations before European contact. The specific city he called Z has not been identified, but the network of settlements revealed by LiDAR research in the Xingu is consistent with what he described. Fawcett's story, eccentric explorer disappearing in search of a lost civilization that turned out to be real, is one of the great adventures of archaeological history. The Amazon continues to yield new discoveries as LiDAR surveys expand our understanding of what flourished there. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the lost city of Z, Percy Fawcett's final expedition from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Lost City Z ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.